I'm sorry.
You're live.
I'm live. Good morning on those throngs of people on the outside watching here. I'm sure that you got your coffee and your scrambled eggs, so good morning. If you don't remember me, and I guess there's some new folks too, I'm Dennis Shunta. I'm a parishioner here at St. Mel. And Michael kind of did what Michael does and recruited me to start to be a catechist, which in my wildest dreams I never thought I would do, but went through the training and I'm all ready to go. So I'm kind of doing my, I guess what you would call my trial period. So I get the interesting things. He did let me do angels, which I enjoyed very much, but I'm kind of focused on the saints and I'm enjoying a lot of that. But this isn't on my time yet because I know I'm being kind. But being a Catholic who's been 67 years in the Catholic faith, I hear these stories every week, just like you guys do. You probably maybe heard them in another church or whatever. And, you know, we are so blessed to have Michael doing this because he makes these things for me to come along. You know, I read him, I go, oh, that's nice. I hear the priest say something, but he makes them come alive and gives them historical context, and he really makes them human. And that's what I really, really enjoy. And I've always said that when you get confirmed, you know, they confirmed me at 8th grade. And I've always said, you know, that's kind of the decision do I make when I'm in 8th grade. You know, it's like things in front of me are sports and so forth. And how much more I could have learned by doing it like you guys are doing it now, which I think is incredible. I have a daughter-in-law who went through RCIA in Boise, and you know, if I would measure what I know about the details of some of the stuff, she's light years ahead of me. So this is a good thing. This really is a good learning experience to know what it really means to be a Catholic Christian and follow Jesus Christ. So anyway, today I am sitting in for Jesse, but I have my own saints. I have two today that I think are really interesting, and I would say they are diametrically opposed. Because one you have at the beginning of the church, you could say he was a church father, and that's Saint Cyril of Alexandria, which is in Egypt, and he was named as a doctor of the church, which you guys know means he's added a lot of spiritual value and credibility to what we know. And he lived in a very tumultuous period of time for the church where everybody was coming up with things that they thought Jesus represented. And there was all sorts of arguing going back and forth. Was Christ divine? Was he man? Was he both? You know, and so that's where St. Cyril of Alexandria came from. Then we flip the page and we look at St. Damien. And everybody's hopefully been to Hawaii. If you haven't, you should. But, you know, I learned about him first when I was in Hawaii and I got told the story of St. Damien. And he is just a model of service. He is a model of giving. And what he did for the island of Hawaii, or the islands of Hawaii, is nothing short of miraculous in how he accomplished that. And you may have heard his story, but it's a really, really powerful story of how he did it. And I'm going to start with him. St. Damien was Belgian, so he was born in the 1840s. And so his whole life goal was to become a priest and a missionary. So some priests might say, you know, I'd like to have my own little parish. And his goal, his drive was, I want to go teach the story of Christ to those who have never heard it. And, you know, think about him going to Hawaii from Belgium. I would imagine the boat ride wasn't all that pleasant to begin with. But, you know, he didn't get on a plane and get there in 8 or 10 hours, whatever it would be. So he was part of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, which, you know, is a group of priests who were missionaries. And he had, I don't have on here, but he didn't get assigned right away. And so it was kind of kind of a challenge for him to even get to that point where he's a missionary. So most of his work as a Christian man was done in Hawaii. And the other thing is, he suffered and died the same fate that to the people he served. And his mission was to Molokai, and everybody knows that's one of the islands. And if you didn't know, Molokai had a very large leprosy colony there for years and years and years. So if you got leprosy, you immediately got taken out of the community and you were sent to Molokai, where you would be with other people suffering the same fate. And from what people say, it was not a very nice spot. It was a very bad spot, and people were going there basically to die. As I said, he did always want to be a missionary, and back then, you had to have a certain amount of education to even qualify to be a priest, and some went to monasteries and got an education before they even thought about it, and were trained in the academics and so forth in order to even enter the priesthood. He got lucky, or unlucky, whatever you want to say, is that there was a priest on Molokai who was ministering to those folks who were sick. And the priest became ill, and there was an opening. And so Damien said, I really want to go there. And so he kind of slid into that slot. I'm probably sure he didn't know what the heck was going on, but this was a time in the history of Hawaii where they were being exposed to all sorts of diseases their bodies couldn't handle, because it was a trade center where ships from all over would come in and do whatever they are on their way to somewhere else. So maybe coming from the United States to go to Australia, they stay there and so forth. But somewhat like the American Indians, there were certain diseases they weren't equipped to handle. The body didn't have the resistance. So there was a lot of suffering due to the exposures to other cultures that was making it a kind of an unhealthy place, if you would. When he got to, yes.
I would say it's kind of a parallel we had, as modern travel, basically, it's the same thing. California history. And they talked about, they used to call it the Kanakas. Don't know why that name came about, but they had freight ships, like you said. It was a nexus, because it's like the only spot in between here and
Right.
Asia, and
Right.
so you get everything from Europe all the way around the world, basically.
So he started off in some of the Catholic parishes in Hawaii dealing with what they were dealing with until he got assigned to Molokai. So there was more than 600 people in this leprosy colony. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but there were leper colonies everywhere. And the one thing that he did was he didn't go in there like you would say, I'm going there just to preach. I'm going there just to minister to them. But he was quite the man's man, apparently, and he went in there and he helped them. And the legend of his hours and what he did to build homes, because they didn't really have anything. I mean, he built homes, and he helped them build farms to sustain themselves and have food. They were not educated, and there were children, and there were schools that there's still some kind of remnants of those schools that he helped build. And a lot of, when he said help, he was the primary worker. He would drag logs, from other parts of the island, and he would find the rocks, and he would actually do a lot of the work himself in the midst of the suffering and disease, and passing the word about Christ and easing their suffering in whatever way he could. There's even a church called St. Philomena that remains, that was part of his work on that island. As one might expect, when you're living with 600 plus lepers, and part of the reason they put them on another island was because they wanted to keep it away from spreading. Well, he got it. And he lived there until he died of leprosy, a very painful and awful death. So he sacrificed by leaving his home. He sacrificed by traveling 2/3 of the way around the world. He sacrificed by helping people build, and he sacrificed with those people. But he gave the ultimate sacrifices. He more or less gave his life by being in there with them and dying of what they were suffering from as well. So amazing man, amazing spiritual leader. Amazing, he's one of those. If you go to Hawaii, you hear about him. But if you do reading, there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of things in Hawaii that are dedicated to him and so forth. But it's good when you do work, but what happens next? And the great thing is that his work attracted others and got the attention of others in the world that this thing was going on and they needed help. So financially, spiritually, and also people coming to the aid of those folks, both from a health standpoint and, again, money to make their life a little bit better while they were there. And so he didn't, his work didn't die with him. His work continued on, which is amazing. And, he was given the distinction, that commander of the Royal Order of Kalakua by the King David of Hawaii, which is, a pretty significant, I think, a pretty significant thing because, that was in the midst of everything kind of being Howleys moving into Hawaii and putting their influence on them. So,
Lieutenant D, I'm going to give you a 5-minute warning.
I have 15. I got, but he talked, so I got 6 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to talk really quick. If you want to watch a wonderful movie about St. Damien, it's called Molokai. And you can rent it, and maybe even on forums.org.
Yep. So anyway, the takeaway is easy. Even when all is lost, there are those who will support us at great risks to themselves. Do I got 15? What, 15 for both?
Minutes. Yeah, 15 for both.
Oh, well. I'm substituting, so.
All right.
The next one I'll go through. I already kind of talked about, but he is an old saint. And Saint Cyril of Alexandria, again, is in Egypt. And I'll skip through most of it, but I'll get to the high points. He was in a time where he kind of got in the middle, embroiled in all sorts of debates about who Christ was. And there were two. Theophilus was a major influence, and if you ever read about him, he was one of the early fathers of the church. But there was one group led by this man named Nestorius, and he thought that Christ was just divine. And the church at the time believed that Christ, like today, was true God and true man. And he also had a major influence on Jesus, on Mary being the mother of God, and Jesus's relationship with Mary. He arranged central figure in the Council of Ephesus, which was one of those early ones when they're nailing out what did Jesus mean to us, who Jesus was. And so he was, you could say he was definitely one of the early fathers of the church. He was a big writer. He wrote about the incarnation and the Trinity, which is central, which is dogma to the Christian faith, not just Catholic, that there's three persons in one man. He was made a doctor of the church in 1882. And so, good job, Kenny. A takeaway for us on this is, like in my life, I heard, when he was talking about the rumbling and the smoke, all I could think of is stuff I was been reading about UFOs populating this planet. So what was going on there wasn't Isaiah. There's a UFO hanging over, spitting fire and smoke, and there's just so much today that what is really truth. And so certain things are the truth no matter who tells us they are, and really difficult in today's world because of half-truths, untruths, and speculation, and all the media and ways that people pass that on. So he's a man who had some rough road, stuck by his guns, was critical in the formation of our faith, of the Christian faith, because what he argued about wasn't just Catholicism, it was Christianity in general. So
is he considered an early church father or just his own?
well, you know, I didn't see anywhere they said, I'm looking at the date, and that he was in all these early councils, so I'm going to make a leap of faith since he was the most influential person, bishop, in Alexandria in Egypt, where the church was going. So I'm going to say he was.
I saw a secular movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of these things where they took a woman of 200 and they essentially turned her into a modern day feminist by changing facts around. And then they portrayed this guy as kind of a violent Taliban, ignorant, bomb throwing terrorist kind of a guy. And then after they got done lying and distorted the truth of the entire movie, at the end of it, in words, against the black scene was, and they made this guy a saint, So anyway, I knew it was a secular movie when I saw it. It's like, yeah.
What saint? What saint?
Saint Cyril.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, ladies, we got some snacks here, and let's take a 2-minute bio break, grab a snack, and then we're just going to go.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Does everybody know who I am?
No. Yes.
Who are you? I'll tell you. I'm Michael Ochoa. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I am a catechist here. I am also part of this parish and been for maybe 6 or 7 years now. I have been living the parish for that long. One of the things that I do, Father talked about priest, prophet, and king. Everybody remember that? And then in Mike's conversation, he said we go out and do things. And one of the things that Father did not say, which was absolutely good, he said, "Oh yeah, you want to do things, but you want to do service like St. Vincent de Paul." And absolutely yes. But there's another large service arm of this church. It's called Knights of Columbus, and I am a member of the Knights of Columbus. Have been. We have different ordinances, but we lead the council here a few years, and a lot of your SBA catechisms are in fact nice. My kids, well, it's Pat, and Jenny is too. Yeah. So, and Bill, of course. Bill is also nice. So, one of the reasons I'm talking to you today, besides telling you who I am, is Mike has asked me to present on baptism. So, baptism, does everybody know? Has anybody been baptized here?
Not here, but not
But
here.
been baptized. Okay. So baptism is one of the first rites of initiation that the church has. The church meaning Christ's universal church. And the significance of baptism, we're going to talk about today.
Raise your hand.
And I thought before I get too far ahead of myself, what I would do is play a, let me switch back to my screen here. What I'm going to do is switch us over to a small talk given by Catholic Central. Now, if you ever listen to my presentations, I always like to do audio visual because I don't want you to just listen to me, although I want you to listen to me. But this is just another way of reaching out to you. And